Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep, and I mean really deep, into one of the world's oldest, most complex, and honestly, most fascinating cultures, India. It's a place of incredible depth, so our goal here is to try and unpack what makes it tick. Let's get right into it.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the sheer variety of India. It's a land of incredible contrasts. Then we'll journey back in time to its ancient roots. After that, we'll explore the philosophical software that kind of runs the whole society. We'll see how that shows up in daily life, and finally, we'll zoom out and look at India's role in the world today.
All right, first up, this central paradox of India. How can one country contain so much mind-boggling diversity? Seriously, it's a place where for every rule you find, you'll find 10 exceptions. And that's exactly where we need to begin.
I mean, just to try and get a handle on the scale of this, think about the languages. We're not just talking about different accents here. We're talking about 22 separate, officially recognized languages, and literally hundreds of dialects. You could drive for a few hours and find that the language has completely changed. That right there is your first clue to just how complex and diverse India truly is.
And this variety, it isn't just in what people say. It's in the very heartbeat of the culture. It's festivals. Up in the north, you've got the brilliant lights of Diwali. But if you head south, the big celebration is Pongal, a harvest festival. Over in the east, it's all about Durga Puja, while the west comes alive for Ganesh Chaturthi. Every region has its own unique flavor, its own rhythm, yet they all feel distinctly Indian.
So, you have to ask, right? How does all of this hold together? Well, it's through this foundational idea, unity in diversity. This is the principle that says all these differences, they aren't a problem to be solved. No, they're the very source of the nation's strength, its richness. It's this belief in a common thread of Indianness that weaves it all together.
Now, let's pull back the layers, because all this diversity didn't just pop up overnight. It's built on a foundation that is thousands and thousands of years old. You really can't understand modern India without appreciating the sheer depth of its history.
Just look at this timeline. You're looking at an unbroken chain of civilization stretching back more than 4,000 years. It starts with these incredibly advanced cities in the Indus Valley, which then flows into the Vedic period, where these foundational philosophical texts were written. Then comes this explosion of thought, with the great epics and the birth of new religions like Buddhism and Jainism. And all of that culminates in a golden age of art, literature, and science that literally gave the world the concept of zero. Each layer builds on the last, creating this incredibly rich cultural foundation.
So if all that history is the hardware of the civilization, then what's the software? What's the operating system that shapes how people think and live? Well, it's this shared pool of really profound spiritual and philosophical ideas that have been shaping the Indian mindset for centuries.
For example, in Hinduism, you have this core framework called the Purusharthas, which are basically the four main goals of life. And what's amazing is how balanced it is. You have Dharma, which is about living a righteous, ethical life, but you also have Artha, the pursuit of wealth and security, and Kama, the enjoyment of life's pleasures, and finally, Moksha, the ultimate goal of spiritual freedom. It's not one or the other, it's a holistic guide to a full, well-lived life.
Then you have Buddhism, also born in India, which offers the Eightfold Path. This is seen as the practical, step-by-step guide to ending suffering. And it focuses on things we can all understand, like right understanding, right speech, right mindfulness, ideas that have, of course, had a massive impact all over the world.
And from Jainism, another major tradition, we get the 5 great vows. And while they're all important, that first one, ahimsa, or nonviolence, is the one that would go on to become a cornerstone not just for Jains, but for the entire cultural fabric of India.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful phrase, ahimsa paramo dharma. It means nonviolence is the ultimate, the highest duty. This single idea, with its roots deep in these ancient philosophies, became a defining value of the culture, influencing everything from huge social movements to simple daily interactions.
Okay, so these are some really big, profound ideas, right? But the question is, how do they actually show up in the real world? Let's take a look at how all this ancient software actually runs in the day-to-day life of modern India.
And the truth is, you see these values everywhere. You see them in the classical dance, where every movement is telling an ancient story. You hear it in the music, which is just filled with spiritual and emotional depth. You see it in the art, but maybe most importantly, you see it in the social fabric itself, in the joint family system that really prioritizes the community and respect for elders. And even in simple, everyday gestures like namaste, which is so much more than a hello, it's a sign of deep mutual respect.
Here's another core value that's just woven into the culture. It's this phrase, Atiti Devo Bhava, which means the guest is equivalent to God. So hospitality in India isn't just about being polite. It's seen as a sacred duty, an obligation to treat any guest with the absolute highest honor and care.
And, this focus on the community creates a really interesting contrast with many Western cultures, where the West often puts a huge emphasis on individual freedom and leaving home at 18. The traditional Indian system is really built around the collective. This means stronger ties to your aunts, uncles, and cousins, and making big life decisions together as a family.
So for our final section, let's zoom all the way out. How does this ancient culture, with all its history, its diversity, its deep philosophy, how does it actually navigate our fast-paced, globalized 21st century world?
And this brings us to what might be the most critical question for modern India. In a world of nonstop globalization, of consumerism, of constant change, can a culture so deeply rooted in ancient traditions really survive and thrive?
Well, the answer seems to be complicated. It's a real tug-of-war. On the one hand, you absolutely see the challenges. The rise of Western consumer culture, the shift from large joint families to smaller, nuclear ones. But at the very same time, the culture's strengths are going global. Yoga and Ayurveda are now huge wellness industries worldwide. Festivals continue to be this incredible glue for communities, and cultural exports like Bollywood are more popular than ever.
And this isn't just a feeling. You can see it in the data. The global cultural footprint is massive and growing. We're talking millions upon millions of people practicing yoga, Indian restaurants in pretty much every city on Earth, and a huge diaspora of people living abroad who act as powerful cultural ambassadors. So what does it all add up to? If you had to distill this ancient, complex, and enduring culture down to one single message for the world, what would it be? It might just be summed up in this one profound phrase from the ancient texts. The whole world is one family. And you have to understand, this isn't some modern slogan. This is an ancient philosophical concept. It's the idea that, in the end, despite all our different languages, festivals, and beliefs, the very diversity that India celebrates within its own borders, we are all connected. So the final thought I want to leave you with is this. In a world that often feels so fractured and divided, could this ancient idea of a single global family be India's most important and urgent message of all?